Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised.
Super duper.
Awesome. Got any news?
Yeah. News. I reckon I have. I just can't remember it. What did we do on the weekend? Oh, we had Bob and Glenda and had a big piss up.
Nothing unusual there?
Standard.
I had like a 4-day bender.
Nothing unusual there. Yep.
Which was a bit exhausting. But anyway, I'm sure we did something good.
Brain cells are gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Did you do anything nice for Easter? Anyone? And then we had Anzac Day, of course.
I'm down a child. One of my children has gone to the UK to live for 10 weeks. Yeah, so that was our big kind of getting him ready to fly. So he left on Friday. So what we're now 5 days later or something. So he's settling in over there and it feels very different.
Did you cry?
So at the end, it was all a bit frantic at the airport and he left and I was like, oh, he was getting a little bit, but okay. Like he wasn't crying or anything because he was with another kid from school. And I was actually surprisingly fine. And on the way home, I was like, oh, God, I feel a bit weird. I didn't cry and it just doesn't feel like it's real. And we got home and my eldest son said, oh, look, let's have a look at Seb on the runway. We can see him. Anyway, we went outside and we could hear the aircraft before it went over our house. And I never even really noticed that. So it's not that bad. It's not that noticeable. Anyway, sure enough, you could say that was it because it's the big flight with, out not that many big flights out of Perth at that time. And that made me cry a little bit. I was sort of like, oh, my God, it went with her. I was like, where's my baby? And then it banked in front of our house to go up the coast. I was like, oh, there he goes. He's off. So I had a bit of a wobble then. But other than that, been fine. Now I just miss him a bit, actually. He's good company.
Good.
Yeah, 1 out of 3.
At least you got one.
Yeah, that's true. You only need one.
Yeah.
What about you, Schmidty? What have you been up to?
Not a lot. So I had the week off.
Yeah.
Had a nice time with Tony on Saturday. We went to Lancefield Market and then we went over to Trentham, which is a little country town.
Yep.
Had a pub lunch there in a nice hotel that they have and just did a bit of – and you'd have appreciated this, Swanee. I had this pair of Wellington boots that had been given to me by Jacqueline.
Yeah.
I got in the UK that looked like something out of Horse and Hound.
Yeah.
And so I had those on and I had black leggings that look a bit jodhpuri.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a new gilet that I'd bought in the UK when I was over. It was, sort of padded.
Yes.
So I looked like
country.
A horse lady.
Yeah.
And I went out and I did it on purpose. I was like, I'm going into the country, so I have to wear my middle-class Bath country lady outfit. Yeah. And when I was at Lancefield Market, one of the girls that I do theatre with was singing and she goes, oh, I like your country outfit. I said, thank you. It's all very carefully curated.
Well, no one does that quite like the English. They've got such a particular –
precisely.
They do it so well.
And when I bought that gilet because I saw it, I said to Tony, I have to have that for my middle-class Bath horsey lady look. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, all I need now is a Range Rover and I'm set.
I love all that stuff. I have no need for any of it, but I love when I see people like, in their, a lot of it's hunting or shooting gear or whatever else.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
No.
I just want to wander around looking.
Yeah, Rivals at all? I don't know. I think we might have talked about it. It's set in 1980s Cotswolds, whatever else. And it's just seeing those clothes, and, there's the practicality or the practical side to it, and then that just everything done in such a beautiful way. The fabrics have been, woven in a mill or whatever it is.
Stuff,
just stuff like that. You go, oh my God, they do it so well. I totally get that.
Yeah,
good for you, and very warm.
It was, and it was a cold day, so I was happy with that.
Yeah, sounds very civilised, if you don't mind me saying. So, it's just a simple, civilised weekend.
It was. I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee,
and I'm Clarkey, and together we are.
Trial by
Wine.
And what are we drinking?
Wine.
Excellent. What kind of wine?
Straight in. It's a feather top. I think it's a Shiraz Malbec.
Yum.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we smashed a couple of these. We got a wine delivery, last week, and that's nearly done.
I've got a dozen coming from the Delatite shortly.
Ooh, fancy. We had some
I find that to be
Delatite
such an
last week.
unusual word.
Delatite?
Yeah. Is it a place or someone's name? Or
It's a place, but I feel like it must be named after somewhere in Europe.
Yeah,
Or
I just
does
it
that
doesn't
sound
it
like
doesn't.
somewhere else
I
to
can't
you?
place it. I only know it from this
I know there's
podcast
the
because you guys drink
Dolomites.
it.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Delatite. It's the Delatite
There's the
River.
Delatite River, yeah.
That's what it is. You
Comes
think
from.
it's such a particular word. I can't place it in any other context. So when you guys say it, I always think, well, there's that word they always use, and I don't know it
Oh,
any
this
other
is
way.
interesting. Apparently, and I don't know if this is. Oh, this would be related. So the name Delatite is derived from the Tagarong language. Sorry, referring to the wife of Beolite, a Taungurung clan leader. So it's an Indigenous name.
Ah, well, there you go.
And
I would not have picked that.
Delatite was his wife, yes. And the name has been adopted to various locations and entities in the area, including the Delatite Shire, Delatite River, and the Merry Jig
Got
Post
it.
Office, which was
So-
known as Delatite. There you go.
If you were a
Interesting.
Victorian, would you be very familiar with it? Pretty much, like it's something you would hear, like a Reach or a Hunter Valley. Not necessarily.
Really? No.
Yeah, I've never heard of
People
it.
talk about Mansfield more than Delatite.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've never
Correct.
heard of it.
It's like people don't talk about Jamison either, but that's, sort of that's on the Jamison River, very close as well, all on that sort of region. The Delatite winery, however, is beautiful and it produces a stunning sparkling Gewürztraminer. Anyway, I'm not drinking that today. That's on order. Today I am drinking Bagley's Irish Cream.
Oh, and where's that from?
Ireland, I believe, or the local Dan Murphy's at any rate. It's a product of Ireland. There you go. And that's because it's nice wintry kind of night tonight, and I felt like
You look snuggly.
I feel like a little snuggle, yeah.
She's got an iconic rack, Swanee.
Yeah, I know.
have
I
an
did. I was
iconic
going to
rack,
sell
yeah.
it myself. I thought it suits you, that sweater.
This
Visual
came
joke,
from
but Schmidty's
Primark.
got a sweater with iconic written across her.
Yeah, a pink
chest.
sweater from
Verbiage.
Primark with, yes, a big letters, iconic. And it came from Primark. And Swanee, what are you drinking though? Have you got water? Have you got anything?
I've got nothing. The only reason I don't is I had a
Nothing?
plan, and then when my brother called, I was just saying to these guys, my brother called just before we're about to go on air, and I've ended up going upstairs and I was getting everything organised up here whilst I was on the call to him, but I forgot to get the drink. So anyway, I'll get that later. I'm fine. I've just finished hosting bridge, so I've had lots of sparkling already.
Oh, good. So you're
primed.
primed. Excellent. Okay.
As my brother said when he said to me, "What are you up to?" I said, "I've just finished bridge." He went, "Oh my God, you're so old."
Rude.
Not wrong though, really.
You should have said, no, I'm so posh.
Yeah, hardly.
Ladies of our age, playing bridge indicates posh.
What would be the alternative? The pokies? We don't really have them in WA. I should try and introduce
One-arm
that.
bandit.
Yeah.
So I'll tell us a story, shall I?
Please do.
Go on then.
Yes,
Right.
please.
So I was procrastinating the other day, and I was meant to be editing an episode of one of our shows, and I've started to try and do the edits in Riverside. Because I was sitting around waiting for it to do things, I was on Facebook as well, and I came across, when you get you start scrolling one video and then you scroll down and you see the next reel and the next reel. But I came across this other video and I was just like, what is this about? And so I got sucked in and I started to watch it. And that's how I came across this story.
Oh.
My sources are an episode from 48 Hours, which I say I'll tell you the name of later, but I'm not sure I've actually remembered to write it down.
I hope you're going to quote the Facebook reel that you...
I think it was off this 48 Hours. It was off the 48 Hours episode. But it was one of those I don't want to give too much away. But then again, now I'm starting to think I've forgotten to actually include that as a reference, so I'll find that in a sec. Oxygen.com, which referenced a TV show called Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins.
I thought you were just going to say kill a relationship with Faith.
I know, right?
That would have been funny.
I thought that at the time when I was writing it out. I thought, WGEM.com, CBSnews.com, newschannel20.com, dailymail.co.uk, KHQA.com, and muddyrivernews.com.
Oh. Where's Muddy River?
Where isn't Muddy River?
You've piqued my interest.
Nearly every
Well,
river
the
in
story
Australia
is
is
in
muddy.
Quincy, Illinois. So I'm going to hazard a guess.
Where are you, Illinois?
We're in Quincy, Illinois, and I'm going to hazard a guess that Muddy River News is something to do with the Mississippi River, which runs through Illinois, does it not?
Illinois.
It might actually. I might start
I
there or
don't really
something,
know.
because I feel like it might have been
my
the book I read
geography's
recently.
rubbish, but Are you looking that up?
I was going to
Swanee,
say,
as our geography lady. What's that?
I was going to, but the reason I was going to say, there's a book that I've read recently, which is like a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, and it's from the perspective of Jim.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's an illustration at the beginning and it has like an old style illustration. I think it says Illinois at the top because I would have said absolutely not, but I think it might be.
Look out for me, oh muddy water, your mysteries are deep and wide. That's from, what is that from? That's the Huckleberry Finn
Showboat.
musical.
No. I learned something. Look.
I can't think of the name of it now. God.
Illinois, and I think that's the Mississippi.
The Mississippi, yeah.
And it ends with Mississippi down here, but we've got Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and
Arkansas. I just love old Arkansas. Love my ma, love my pa, but I just love old Arkansas. What's it called? Big River. 1984 Tony Award-winning musical called Big River, which is set.
Hugh Jackman?
No, it was. Cameron Daddo played it. Yeah, when it came out.
Yeah.
Melbourne, I saw it twice, and Cameron Daddo played Huckleberry Finn. It was just magnificent, and it's one of those shows that I'm sad hasn't come back because it was
I've just caught myself doing one of my yes. I just did it. I didn't know that I did that. Now that I've said it in writing, and I've just heard myself do it, I went, there it is. Oh my God.
Don't worry, it's a little one that I'm saying, yeah. So I wouldn't worry about it. So Illinois, and we have just established the Mississippi is through Illinois, and I'm pretty sure that's the Muddy River in question when we're talking about Muddy River news. So we're diving straight in here. Ready?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
At 3:03 p.m. on the 23rd of February 2023, Bill Postle received a text message from his son-in-law asking if he could call his daughter Rebecca Postle Bliefnick to find out when she's getting the kids because the school had called the dad to say no one had picked them up. He said he'd also had sent Rebecca some texts, but he'd had no response from her, he being the husband. As Rebecca and her husband Tim were separated and about to go to court for their divorce, Bill tried to contact Rebecca and went to her house at 3:30 p.m. where he found her shot to death in the second floor bathroom.
Oh.
That was a quick story.
How'd you get into the bathroom?
It's his daughter's house. So he went upstairs looking for her and he found her. He went to the neighbour's house to use their phone to call 911, which I thought was weird because it's 2023, but it's not material.
Okay.
It's not really material. So the police are then dispatched to the home and they begin an investigation. So who was Rebecca Bliefnick?
What's her name? Bliefnick.
Bliefnick.
Okay.
Bliefnick. It's Bliefnick. Rebecca Bernadette Postle, or Becky as she was called by everyone, was born in Quincy, Illinois in 1981. She did very well at school, graduating valedictorian at Quincy Notre Dame High School and then going on to Quincy University, where she got a bachelor's in biological science with a minor in chemistry. She was a smart one. Whilst at university, Becky met Tim Bliefnick, who was good at sports. Oh, look, I don't know anything about American rules football, so I'll quote this from the university website, which is quincy.edu, 2019 Hall of Fame class. So this guy was inducted into their Hall of Fame, right? Tim Bliefnick, 05, was a linebacker on the football team and finished with 287 career tackles, fourth best in school history. His 104 tackles as a senior in 2004 ranked fourth all-time in a single season. Bliefnick also was named to the NAIA All-American second team and the Don Hanson All-Region first team that season. Bliefnick was named...
You're clearly a fan of this, aren't you?
To numerous all-conference teams. I don't know anything about it, so I just thought it sounds good. I'll put it in.
Yeah.
All conference teams during his career and was an NAIA All-American Scholar Athlete. Bliefnick was a 4-time recipient of the Kevin and Sue Briany Scholarship, and he received the Mart Heinen Award his second year, given to the most outstanding male and female senior athletes at Quincy University. So, yeah, he was good at sports. Tim and Becky fell in love, and they were married in 2009. Tim was working as a salesman in the recycling industry, and Becky was working as a top salesperson for a pharmaceutical company, and they were kicking goals. By all accounts, they were practical and family-oriented and prioritised a deposit on their home over a fancy wedding. Becky was keen to start a family, and according to her sister Sarah, she put her ambitions to become a doctor on hold to have her children first. So she had her first son in 2011 and followed up 2 years later with their second son. And things were really good initially. When I say initially, for the first, 5-10 years. they seemed happy with each other and they enjoyed having their children. And obviously, like so many of these stories from the outside looking in, everything was idyllic and it seemed like a very happy relationship. Becky had always wanted a career working hands-on with people in the medical field. So she undertook a nursing degree, which she graduated summa cum laude from Blessing Ryman College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and gave birth to her third child during the spring break of her final year, which would have been 2018.
Well-timed.
Yes, and I read that she only had one day off for that. Like, so she's pregnant pretty much throughout her third year, manages to have the baby in her spring break. She's
organised.
One day off. She's driven is what she is.
It's now or never.
And it would seem to be around the time of her taking up nursing studies that things started to change between Tim and herself. She was, as I say, she was a go-getter, right? So she was packing a lot into her life. She worked for Quincy Medical Group in gastrointestinal surgery. Then she went to work in the Blessing Hospital's ER. During the COVID pandemic, she worked as a travel nurse at 2 healthcare centres in Missouri and was nominated for an International Daisy Award for her exceptional care. She was also a certified trauma nurse specialist and a sexual assault nurse examiner, and continued her studies throughout all of that because she wanted to be a nurse practitioner, so she was working up to that.
I'm just exhausted listening to all the things
I know,
she's
right?
done
And
while
3
I'm
children.
sitting here.
And 3 children.
I'm sitting here very quiet.
I know.
You may have noticed.
Yeah. That was my other path.
I went to make a joke and I went, no, I don't think you're in a position to. Let's just listen, shall we? And
keep
learn.
a lid on it.
Let's listen and learn, Carla.
She was also heavily involved with the Boys' School Association where she volunteered, and she also volunteered at an animal rescue group, not to mention being an awesome mother to her boys.
No wonder she refers to one day off as a spring break.
Yeah. And she packed a lot into her life, and a lot of people remember her as being extremely generous with her time with others. So there were lots of sort of anecdotes around how someone who was recovering from surgery or something, she would go over and check on them, like she made time for lots of people. She gave a lot of her time up. I don't know quite how she fit it all in, but she did. But while she was doing all of that, Tim was getting into amateur dramatics and fitness.
Odd combination, is it?
Yeah, he joined the community theatre group, and I'm not going to judge that, but I have said before it does attract interesting people. And he was getting really into fitness and might have been a PT or something. He had lots of video content of himself.
So he had been an athlete, though, so it wasn't like it was a whole new
that's right. No, it wasn't new.
Vein, but perhaps promoting himself might be different.
Yes. More starting to talk about himself.
Influencing,
And trying to be an influencer, grew his hair out, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And he had this weird little moment on Family Feud in 2019. And this is the bit that sort of gets picked up by the media and everyone carries on about. And it's really a bit inconsequential, if I'm honest. It's like so many of these little things that's the hook for the media to go with.
Yeah.
So you will see him referred to as things like the Family Feud murderer or Family Feud killer. Nothing really to do with Family Feud. But what happened was he and his family, Becky couldn't go because she was too bloody busy.
Of course she was. She was off being Florence Nightingale. Yeah.
She was, and looking after the kids and everything else and studying. But he and the rest of his family got to go on the show, and they ended up winning around $20,000, which they split between them. Now, in the footage of the show, one of the questions was something like, what do you regret doing on your wedding day? And Tim answered it saying something like, oh, I love you, honey, sorry. And then he said, saying I do.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And what they don't talk about was that saying I do was the second or third
answer,
most popular answer on the board. But the audience were like, oh, and the guy who was I can't think of his name, the guy who does little big shots, the American bloke.
Harvey, is it? Harvey? Steve Harvey?
Yeah. He's the host of the Family Feud. And he
that makes it sound like I watch it the way I answer
that.
To be fair.
Reels on Facebook.
I promise I do not, but I think I do know who it is. I think it is Steve Harvey.
You're right. So what happens is he says this and he sort of gets a bit of an expression from Steve Harvey. He's like, oh, God. And he's like, yeah, you're going to get in trouble tonight kind of thing. Whatever, right? So but this is in 2019. Anyway, that has, of course, gone down in history as public foreshadowing. But I think he just thought he was being funny at the time. Now, more importantly, though, is the fact that when the money was divvied up, Tim was very much of the view that the money was his, not theirs, i.e. not for you, Becky. And the marriage by 2019 was under considerable strain, Becky wanted Tim to step up and do more work around the house, help with the kids and support her while she continued her studies, with the aim to get promoted and earn more money. But he wasn't into that, i.e. doing anything to be helpful, and so he didn't.
Because he's the star?
Promoting himself, probably, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Becky ended up going part-time, in point of fact, so that she could be at home more, since Tim wasn't going to step up and do any housework or look after the kids. They were fighting quite a bit by 2021, with Becky saying he'd shouted at her in front of the kids and he'd thrown things around. Tim had it, and he filed for divorce in January 2021 and moved out, which is unusual, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Would have expected that she was the one. Now, from what I understand, Becky was a devout Catholic, and divorce wasn't really something that she was looking for. She wanted to work on the marriage and fix things with him. I believe that she suggested they go to counselling, but he's just like, no, I don't want to. So,
I'm good, love. Thanks.
Yeah, no. I'm going to go and tread the boards at the Amateur Community Theatre. And I believe he also had a little stint on
Kyneton Theatre Group want me.
something like Gladiators. One of those shows like Gladiators, where they go through obstacle courses and stuff. So he was having a bit, it wasn't Kyneton Theatre Company. He was having a bit of a go at being a bit of a star, I think. Yeah.
A C-grade celebrity.
Yeah, He did move out, but he only moved a few blocks away, so he was close enough to see the boys and help with them, but he was definitely out of the house.
Yeah.
And the divorce wasn't an amicable one. Tim made demands mainly around the majority of custody, so he wanted to have the kids more than he would allow Becky to have them, and she wasn't going to agree to that. And they just didn't see eye to eye on anything much, and the divorce had become a battleground, with both of them filing protection orders against each other. Becky claimed Tim had thrown a tray across the room in front of one of the boys and punched a hole in the wall. She also said that he entered her residence without permission and cut down a Japanese maple tree she was very fond of on her property, that is. She sent messages to a friend of hers, Nicole Bateman, in May, saying, he told me if I outed his dad that he, Ray the dad, would probably have to move, then kill himself. I absolutely think he will try to take the kids sometime.
If she outed him...
I'll get onto it, yeah.
Who? Are we talking about him or the grandfather?
The dad.
The grandfather.
The grandfather, yeah.
He's dead.
In June that year, she told another friend, Becky Spots, that she didn't want Timothy's father, Ray, to have unsupervised contact with her children ever again, and that she thought Tim had true mental health problems and she was scared to get an order of protection. In September 2021, after a colleague of Becky's was killed by her spouse, Becky sent a text message to her sister that read, if something ever happens to me, please make sure the number one person of interest is Tim.
Wow.
Jeepers.
Because that is who would do something to me. I'm putting this in writing because I'm fearful that he will somehow harm me, come after me, or will try to do something to me that takes away from the kids or the kids away from me. He already has lied multiple times to paint himself as a victim and me as the perpetrator when it is absolutely the other way around. No, I have not sent this to Mum and Dad because I don't want them to be out of their mind with worry. Then, in December 2021, Becky does file for an ordinance of protection against Timothy's father, Ray, and that didn't get granted. So she's put 2 orders of protections up against Tim. Sorry, one against Tim and one against his father, neither of which get granted by the court. Tim puts an order of protection up against her, saying that she's stalking and harassing him, and he has this video of him confronting her. I think that in a hallway, it might be in the hospital, and it's so ridiculous because she's like, he's saying to her, you got to stop stalking me, and she's like, I'm not stalking you, I just want you to sign this paper. He's like, stop talking to me, stop harassing me. She's like, I'm not doing that. It doesn't really prove anything. It's just an irritating carry-on between the two of them, but he thought it was evidence of her stalking him.
Or him trying to set it up as evidence. Trying to create evidence, But
it's more childish than anything else. Anyway, the judge says, no, I'm not going to stand this order of protection up either, but you do actually need to stay away from each other unless you are dropping the kids off. So you have to stay a certain distance away from one another. Just cool your jets, the pair of you. And Tim was also ordered to return a 9mm handgun that was in Becky's name but had been given to him as a gift by her. He didn't return it. He said he hadn't seen it for a couple of years, so he didn't know where it was. So they can't agree divorce terms as Becky wants equal custody, but the children are not to hang out with their granddad unsupervised, and she wants her gun back. But Tim says he'll only agree to equal custody if she undergoes a psych evaluation, and he wants his dad to be able to be with his grandsons unsupervised. And the whole thing about Ray, the dad, was that Becky said she had heard that there had been some allegations that Ray had abused or been perverted around kids, not her own kids, but nothing had ever been proven, and there were no charges against Ray to support this, which is why the protection order wasn't granted. Becky was worried that Ray would take... Now, this I thought was interesting. Becky was worried that Ray would take the kids from her, saying, "It has gotten to the point I hate even going to work for fear he will secretly take off with the kids and I won't see them for a long time or ever." Mm. So she wasn't just worried about Tim. She was worried about Ray.
But
and
was
Ray, there's
anything...
nothing much about Ray. There's very little to find on Ray, apart from references about Ray in context of what Becky said or Becky's protection order.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Tim saying nonsense, but there's nothing else really. So even though all this was going on, Becky was trying to move on with her life, even though the divorce obviously was playing out pretty badly. She'd met a bloke who worked in healthcare and they'd been dating for a bit and seemed to be getting on really well, and his name was Ted Johnson. So Ted and Becky had a date on the 13th of February 2022, and Ted stayed the night. Ted and Becky had a date on the 13th of February, and Ted stayed the night. At around 12:30 a.m., Becky's neighbour, Taylor Hyman, stop it.
Taylor Hyman.
Exactly. You're doing sex signals because we all know it was Valentine's Day. They were going out. That's probably what happened. But Taylor Hyman, which I couldn't get past anyway.
Is her middle name still Hazza?
I don't think so. She's a married woman. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Gets an alert. Oh, sorry. Taylor's a man. His wife is
Taylor. To say?
Mrs. Hyman.
Yeah.
I think his hymen's still intact.
I think Taylor's is, yeah.
Jeepers.
He gets an alert off his security camera and sees footage of someone walking up and down the driveway, which I think is either shared with Becky's or is right next to her property.
Yeah.
So we're now back to our starting date of February 23rd, 2023. Investigators have swabbed Ted Johnson and they pretty much discount him immediately from everything. He didn't have a gun. There's nothing to indicate any issue between him and Becky, and he probably was at work when it all happened, or, he wasn't there, alibied out. At the scene of the crime, they find that an upstairs window of one of the boys' bedrooms had been prized open and broken, and a shoe imprint was left on the carpet. The door and door frame to Becky's bedroom had been damaged, indicating someone had kicked it in. Becky's mobile phone was on the ground behind the bedroom door. Becky was lying on her back on the floor of the bathroom. Around her were several small pieces of plastic as well as shell casings. She had been shot 14 times.
Oh,
what?
Jesus.
With a 15th shot not hitting her. She'd been shot in the hands, arms and chest with a bullet passing through a lung and one through her spine, paralysing her.
Oh, gosh.
And the medical examiner thought it was very likely that she'd lived for a short while after the attack. So she did not die instantly. When they inspected her mobile phone, Becky had tried to call 911 at 1:10 a.m. but had misdialed the call and it didn't go through. They believe that someone entered the house from the boys' bedroom, came down the hall where she then saw them, and she tried to close the bedroom door and it was kicked in, and then she likely ran to the bathroom where she was shot dead. The timing of Becky's death was coincidentally a week before the divorce trial was set to happen. So police pretty quickly started to look at Tim as a suspect. Also, friends and family were open about the myriad written concerns that Becky had sent them about her safety. They had no witnesses though, so just like in the TV shows, they had a look around for any security camera footage and they were able to find something of interest. Not on the night of the murder, but over the course of a few weeks prior, they see a person on a bike riding in winter and in the wee hours of the morning past the town's bus depot and over in the direction of Becky's house. And then they see the same individual riding back about, some time later. They can't identify the person, but the timing is such that they can line it up with the security footage of the person in the driveway at Becky's house taken from the Hyman's security camera. And the only thing of interest about that is that the bike has no reflectors on the wheels. So unlike the TV shows, the CCTV is grainy, dark, smudgy. You can't make out any. It's grey, grayscale.
Yep.
So there's no identifying features apart from it's a bike, and there are no reflectors on the wheels. So a few days after Becky's murder, they found a bike about a block from Tim's house, which had no reflectors on the wheels, and it was a blue Schwinn, I can't remember, 19 or 20-inch dirt bike, I think. And they decided to search Tim's house and car, and he cooperated with them, no problem. And then 2 weeks after Becky was murdered, they arrested and charged Tim with her murder. So what did they think they had on him that was compelling enough to charge him? It turns out, of course, that Tim had been doing some internet searching.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
I don't know how many times we need to say this,
Clear
but it's
your
a
history.
bad idea. Or clear your history, yeah. Even clearing your history won't clear
Use
it.
someone else's
Correct.
computer.
Incognito mode, anyone?
No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
use someone else's computer, yeah. So he'd been searching for things like how to open my door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade pistol silencer, and how to clean gunpowder off your hands. Also, if you remember that night...
Just interested.
asking for a friend.
I don't think that means anything. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing to see here.
Well, don't worry, the defence lawyer pretty much said, well, we've no idea when he made those searches. You know, they're not time-stamped. That's not relevant, Your Honour. Yeah.
Surely
They
what
would
he
be, actually.
should do is, my friend wants to know how to clear gunshot
Asking for a
residue
friend.
off. Yeah, that's right. It's not me.
I agree. But to your point, Swanee, I don't know how they couldn't have been time-stamped.
Yeah, I don't understand. That wouldn't
So
have been
I
like
was like,
some kind of order or whatever. Yeah.
I think she just said that. Oh, you don't know when he did that? Well, yeah, we do. It's on his search history.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, it's
What
not
is it?
like this was 10 or 15 years ago.
No.
This was 2 years
2
ago.
years ago.
Yeah. So if you remember that night that the guy walked down the driveway when Ted and Becky were home
Yeah.
having a nice time, the 13th of February, well, it turns out coincidentally that Tim was looking up the rego and the VIN of Ted's car about 20 minutes after that footage was taken.
Ted's car. So not the guy she was on the date with, but Ted the neighbour.
No,
The
Ted
Ted
is
the
the guy.
lover.
Ted the
Sorry?
lover.
Ted was the lover, not the
Ted's
neighbour.
this
Sorry.
part of this.
Ted's this
Oh,
one.
I'm getting mixed up with Hyman. Sorry, my mistake. Ted was the Ted. That makes more sense to me. Got it right.
Ted is the lover, yes.
So, Schmidty, they had a timestamp on when he was searching for the red show,
Yeah.
but not anything else.
How about that? Yes, they did, clearly.
How
I'm
funny.
telling you,
Yeah.
worst
Excellent defense lawyer.
ever.
Yeah.
It's a shocker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that there's much to defend, in fairness. They also found spent shell casings in Tim's house, and a ballistics expert said that 27 of them had been fired from the same gun used in the murder. They didn't
right.
find the gun itself, but they found a crowbar, and there was an expert who said they couldn't definitively say it was the same one used to open the window, so that didn't go very far.
Schmidty, asking for a friend, do you know the answer to how do you clean gunshot residue off your hands?
GSR off your hands.
Not really, but I always give everything a go with fairy liquid first. And if not, then I would say some gumption, a bit of abrasive
gumption,
something.
yeah.
You need
right,
a bit of abrasive. You'd want to make sure that you've got a nail brush because
Yeah,
it'll
nail
get right
brush.
up in your fingernails as
Yeah.
well and under your fingernails.
Yeah.
So,
And in your
With that
clips.
gumption, do you have to take off 2 or 3 layers of skin to make
I
sure you
think
get it
if you
all
really
off?
want to get rid of gunshot residue, I would be taking 2 layers of skin off minimum.
Yeah, right. Okay, good.
Just
Thanks.
saying. I
I'll
don't
make
know
sure
for
I pass
but-
that on to my friend.
Yeah, that's probably how I would address that. Yes, I feel like a helpful column. Dear Schmidt,
Yeah, exactly.
asking for a friend, how to clean
Yeah.
off gunshot residue.
I think that's what your column should be called, asking for a friend, so they can go, dear asking for a friend.
Yes, it's a good idea. So he'd also set up a fake Facebook account, and I think it was called something like John Smith or something.
Oh.
And he'd been looking at
Brilliant.
buying a bike on Marketplace about 3 months before Becky was killed. And in fact, he looked at a blue Schwinn bike, which was exactly the same make and size, etc., of the one that they found a few blocks from his house, but he didn't buy it. He actually bought a different one. He bought a black one from a different brand. But it seems like a bit of a coinky dink, doesn't it? Again, the defence lawyer's like, well, I'm not proud of it, but I've got a fake Facebook account. Everyone does it, so it's not really a thing. I'm like, well, I haven't.
No, I
No.
don't think it is.
I don't think it is a thing, bad defence lawyer. So the bits of plastic around Becky were likely from a recyclable Aldi bag, which Tim had loads of in his house. someone had used it as a makeshift
As a silencer.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Now, his DNA was on the bag, but they
Is that what they
argued-
say when on the recycling of the Aldi bags? Other uses for this bag.
I haven't seen it, but apparently it could work. Yeah, because I don't think anyone reported gunshots. In fact, I know no one reported gunshots, so it must have been fairly effective. And they were these little bits of broken plastic, like all weird, like someone had, chewed it, like a dog had chewed it up or something. That's what it looked like.
Do you have to stuff it with a certain Aldi product to make it most effective for silencing? Dear asking for a friend.
No. And I'm not sure, but I would assume it's a bit like shooting through a pillow because that also has the same effect in terms of silencing. So it's some kind of deadening.
Is that just your default position on that?
Well, look, now that I know this, if you haven't got a pillow handy, apparently a recycling bag will do a good job. But it's one of those thick nylon ones, like when I say
the silver lining bag, or
no, it wasn't one of those. It was more like
cooler bag.
Not the cooler bag, more like the forever bags that they're trying to.
Okay.
I feel like you have to put a tub of Greek yogurt inside the bag to help with the silencing. There's got to be some.
Would help. It'd
Aldi
be very
product.
messy, but yeah.
I've got a packet of those
mess.
Italian biscuits they used to make tiramisu.
What about the Aldi dog sausage?
Ooh.
Perfect. As long as you don't want it to be too much like meat because it might slow the bullet down.
Don't worry, it's not too much like meat, the Aldi one. It's called Julius or something.
Very little like meat.
Yeah, Julius.
Yeah, don't worry, it's not much like meat. That'll be all right, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think that for me is a signature Aldi product, the Julius line.
Is it like a Devon?
It's like a Devon.
Yeah, it is like a Devon.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to know. You can interchange it with a Devon if you don't. Dog food, throw it.
If you're not an Aldi shopper.
Correct. I'd struggle a bit. I don't have an Aldi nearby. It's good to know I could just go and get a knob of Devon.
Of Devon, yeah. A full knob, though. You can't just get it. Like, can I have half a knob? No, sorry.
Got to be a full knob.
No, you got to get the 1.2.
It'll be too noisy. What'll be too noisy? The fight of the kids because there's not enough Devon.
So the thing about the Aldi bag was that his DNA was on the bag and possibly fingerprints or the bits of bag, but he had all these bags and he was putting the kids' stuff in the bags and, when he's dropping the kids off.
Yeah.
So they were like, well, look, that could have just been someone came, grabbed the bag, shot her through it. It doesn't necessarily
There's
say
a reasonable doubt explanation.
It's circumstantial, yeah. There was also DNA under Becky's fingernails, and I found this very interesting because when they analysed it, it could have belonged to Tim or the three children, the three boys. And I thought it was really interesting that they couldn't get to the point where they could specify it was Tim's DNA profile over the three boys. They just knew that there were like four people are related to this DNA. It could be any one of them. So that was interesting. And the shoe print in the bedroom didn't match any of Tim's shoes or his foot size, which is interesting.
Were they bigger?
I think it might have been. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I bet they weren't shorter. I bet they weren't smaller.
I don't think it was smaller, no. On balance, when you look at the evidence, in terms of like hard evidence, there's very little hard evidence to link him to the scene,
Little factual evidence kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can link that the gun that shot her shot those other casings in the house, but there's no gun, there's no fingerprints on the gun, So it is actually all one of these circumstantial cases. As I said, Tim's legal team wasn't very good, though. He protested his innocence, saying that he believed that a prowler had broken in and killed Becky. But the jury didn't buy it, and he was found guilty of the murder of Becky Bliefnick and was sentenced to 3 natural life sentences merged into one. And I have no idea why you would say I'm going to give you 3 life sentences and I'm going to merge them into one. For one murder. It's all a bit weird. And this basically means he's in prison without the possibility of parole. So it's like a whole life order like they get in the UK.
Yeah, right.
Tim's legal team filed an appeal in 2024, but the Appellate Court 4th Judicial District said, no, that's denied. He then tried to appeal that with the Illinois Supreme Court, who also said no in January 2025. I believe that the boys are now living with Becky's parents and that the family are all looking out for them because, of course, not only did this situation is not just that they've lost Becky, but they've lost their father as well. Pretty much that is the Family Feud killer case. Another media-bestowed appellation that is absolute nonsense and nothing to do with the real guts of the story. On balance, like Scott Peterson's case, I think he probably did kill her, but there's not much evidence to support that or at least link him to it.
Is he legally guilty?
Prosecution said he was motivated by the upcoming divorce case outing his father, but in fairness, his father was already outed because...
As what?
Well, outed in
as a not pedo.
Becky's order of protection was on public record, her request for that. So that, and she had said that she thought that she'd heard that the father was a pedo
kitty fiddler.
Something along those lines.
It's a lot, though, to go and ask for a protection order on the basis of something you've heard where there's no evidence of it.
I think it's really interesting. And was it just to be in control? As in, did he just kill her so he could be in control? And where is his father in all of this?
Yeah.
That's the other
I know, right?
The more I thought about it, I'm like, the dad's totally silent. We don't want to cast aspersions here, Woo, and get ourselves sued. But one does wonder what happened there, like if the father was so upset. And why was Becky saying she was scared that the father was going to take her kids from her? There's no follow-up on that. I find some of that part of this story is missing at this point in time. And maybe because it's a newish story, really. It's only happened in the last couple of years. So I was questioning that. And I think now I'm about to go down another line, which is not to incense anyone or to make anyone feel like I'm victim blaming. But I'm certainly not victim blaming. I think he probably did kill her. It's very likely because who else would have, right? For what purpose, etc. But even some of the things, to your point about her putting an order of protection against Ray out based on something she's overheard or someone's told her, there's no evidence of it, he's not been charged of it. There was, I think, a bit of behaviour between both of them which was making the other one look bad.
Yeah.
So building a case around custody and building a case around certain things. And I wonder whether or not the whole allegation about the dad was a beat up to try and win her side of the argument. Don't know. I do wonder about that. And they said that there was no evidence that he'd ever been violent towards her. Like he'd thrown something and punched the wall or something, but he'd never hit her.
Yeah.
Not to say that he didn't just lose his shit on this occasion, but it's very premeditated if he did, because there's lots of the suggestion that he's riding back and forth to her house and spying on her, and the Vin thing, the whole thing of that is like he knows he suspects she's got a boyfriend, so he goes to the house, he sees the car there, he then goes back to his home, and not only is he looking it up, but he rang government DMV type thing. It wasn't quite them, but it was something like the DMV. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I can tell you they're not going to answer the phone, right? And they're not going to give you whoever's details it is. Like it's all a bit weird. But they reckon he made a phone call to this agency to try and find out information about that VIN and that registration. So maybe he was stalking her. Maybe he was mental. Don't know. It's weird.
I mean, it's not normal behaviour, is it?
No, it's not.
It's the behaviour of someone going through an ugly divorce on both sides, by the sound of things.
That's what I reckon, yeah, on both sides.
If you were the defence
not until the end. I'm not suggesting that turning up with a gun and doing it. But the silliness of finding out who someone's with and all the rest, I can totally imagine that going on. Yeah.
If you were the defence lawyer, wouldn't you give Ray a look to give the jury reasonable doubt?
I probably would have. If I was a defence lawyer, I probably would have tried to defend my client.
Anything.
His son might have said no. Like you don't.
True.
He would have to get the approval of the son,
no,
who might have gone. That's ridiculous, and they've got no evidence against me, so I'm not going to worry.
I think you could be right about that, because I think I might have read something along the lines of they didn't call any witnesses either, and I think it was to do with Tim saying no, I don't need to. Maybe it was
no evidence.
There's no evidence. I didn't do it.
Well, there was none by the sounds of it. Like it sounds very
little.
A very light on circumstantial.
He did some searching online. He had some Aldi bags in his house, and there was Aldi bags. Would have ended up
in her house.
Could have, yeah. And that the most compelling thing is that he had the gun, and that there were shell casings in his basement that were a dead match for the same gun that shot her. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not direct evidence, though, is it? Like you would think that whilst I think what you're saying, the fact that it's most likely that he did do it,
that doesn't
it's
mean
hard
that
to
there's enough
imagine a
evidence to
jury
say.
convicting him and giving him
And yet
3
they did.
life sentences.
Does seem bizarre.
And they did.
Don't you find, like, I guess culturally, this idea that when we listen to stories and we hear about, the gun, that I want it back and I want it in my house and I want it here, like that is so far removed from being
us,
in Australia.
yeah.
You find
It is, isn't
evidence
it?
of there being a gun in a house, you'd be like, oh my God.
Get it out.
What is the story
must
there?
be underbelly if you've got a gun in the house.
Or, what sort of, there's a whole host of things that you would jump to try and, work out why a gun would be in the house. But for them, it is just, I don't know, it's just so
commonplace.
acceptable.
It's normal.
Yeah.
So when we moved out of Melbourne and came up here, there's a much. It's not like it's a loose gun
farmers
culture at all, but people have guns up here, and they talk about the fact that they have guns, and no one's bothered by that. It's not at all threatening.
Are they 9mm handguns or they're rifles?
No, they're absolutely.
They're working things. They're for the purpose that you need to have them.
But what I'm saying is that it's that there's a very different way that you can look at guns in and around you in a community, which is completely non-threatening because no one's running around killing people with them.
Yes.
They have them for a very different purpose. And I could see how in America people would have guns for their protection, not to go around killing people. And she may well have been going, I want that gun back because I want a gun to protect myself because there's some whack jobs around here as she points at him. Yeah.
I'm a single mum currently at home with my children. I want to be able to protect them if something happens.
With an aggressive ex.
Yes. Well, that's, it's not really the way we look at it here, but certainly over there it would be.
Yeah, I could see that being normal, completely different to what you would get in the city in Australia.
Yes,
no one has guns and no one talks about having guns.
No.
There was a chair that was pulled up. So it was interesting the way that whoever it was entered the building because they didn't go in through the front door or the back door. They actually climbed up onto the second story and broke in the second story kid's window. And part of the prosecution's argument was, well, you knew that because the boys were at his house. So they're like, well, you knew the boys wouldn't be there because they're tucked up in bed at your house. So that's why you went for that. Even that seems a bit odd to me. Like, why would you go to all that effort when he could probably have just easily broken in on the ground floor? And
I reckon the only reason
to get up, and there was no evidence again with the chair of his DNA or fingerprints or anything.
Yeah, right. I reckon the only reason you would do that is because she's downstairs and you know that you can go upstairs and get in without her hearing. So it's a way to get in.
Though she was upstairs.
Yeah, but so he might have waited for her to come upstairs. There's any number of things, but I think you wouldn't. To your point, if you're going to go in any kind of a rage or a quick killing kind of thing,
it's premeditated.
Go in the front door, but I think he's gone in there and gone, I'll just wait here. She won't hear me if I do this.
If he did it, it's premeditated. All the weirdo riding back and forth on the bike, which we don't know is him because you cannot tell.
Right.
But it is weird. And the coincidence of
with other
the bike, he's looking at the bike that matches the exact same thing. He doesn't buy it on Facebook, so he doesn't reach out to this person, but it's nothing to say that he didn't find another means to do that. And then he maybe bought the black one to throw him off the scent. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people too aren't. With all of the cases that we've studied here and all of the things I guess we've learnt along the way, we would look at that and go, it's probably not enough evidence to convict.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that, you'd be sitting there going, of course that means he did it. Whether you wouldn't necessarily be looking at it in a legal context of it, you'd be going, the sum of all these little suspicions mean who else has done it?
That's exactly how it's happened. That's how he's been convicted.
Yeah, I think he did it rather than, by any kind of legal definition. Is there no reasonable doubt?
If I was going through that court case and that's all that was presented to me, I'd be like, I don't think I could say hand on heart that I know he did it beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah,
I don't think I could say that.
Exactly.
Reggie, be outraged. It seems to be terribly circumstantial. I don't think he's innocent. I don't know why, but I didn't believe Scott Peterson is either, and we'll see what happens with that one. But I don't think he's innocent. The shooting 14 times was very personal. It was like that episode, Colour, overkill. It's an overkill.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, this is a person who's angry at this point in time. Unloading an entire clip into a person.
Yep.
standing over her body and shooting her at her 15 times.
Also, not
Jesus.
killing her in that process. You know, if
Yeah.
the bloke's saying that she was still alive, like he's not.
For minutes at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Lying there
That's a bit
dying,
odd.
and he's probably standing there watching it happen. Yeah.
Ooh,
Bad.
ooh,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I reckon that it got to that point where he just hated her.
It's a big leap, though, isn't it? From
It
no
is, 'cause then
criminal
you give
record to.
It feels like perhaps for me, it needs a documentary. We need someone to flesh it out and put some more meat on the bones for us. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's still perhaps early days. There'll be someone working on it. Someone else will be trying to put together. We need to know more about Ray.
The
We need to know
Innocence
more about his
Project, right?
relationship with Tim.
Becky,
A bit more about, but yeah, it feels a bit
with
like
children in general.
I feel like we're gone from there's been a murder, ex-husband, 3 life sentences. I'm like, oh, whoa, okay, well, there must be some pretty good dirt, but there
Well, there
doesn't.
isn't. That's it,
No,
right?
that's the interesting
And
part about this
every
story.
article I read gave me the
Oh,
same bits of,
yeah.
evidence.
Rehash stuff from
Rehash
one
the
article
same
to
thing, and
another.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't get it. There's not
No.
enough in
Yeah.
this. And that's why I think people go, oh, well, he said that comment on Family Feud and he's foreshadowed the whole thing.
Yeah.
So he must have hated her. And, I'm like, it's
I don't
bullshit.
get that. No.
That's no
Third most
nonsense, right?
popular.
Yeah.
Answer. Yeah, which, by the way, no one really talks about. But yes, it was. So it's just interesting how the media and the social construct of this crime has turned into this man kind of led on that he was thinking about this.
There's a
At this
soundbite.
point,
There's a
which is
headline.
bullshit.
Solution solved.
The thing I did understand was that a year after they had the Family Feud thing, this is the bad bit in my opinion, but we again don't know how this played out. The whole community went down to like the local RSL or something to watch these Family Feud episodes. And so they sort of intimated that, then of course that Becky would have been incredibly mortified and embarrassed by her husband saying, oh, sorry, I love you, but said I do.
Yeah.
And by the time this is actually out, this would be 2020, they probably are a bit rocky at this point. But surely he would have said to her when he came home after recording it 2019, oh, the question was this and I said that, it just seems to me like it gave, even that's a bit of a stretch about how offended she was or wasn't at that point. We don't really know how she feels about it. I don't think she gave a shit, to be honest. I think she was over him.
She would have been fine if she got some of the money that he wouldn't give her.
She wanted to keep the marriage, right? Because she wanted to make it work. So when I say she was over him, I think she was over some of his behaviours, but she still thought that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why it's really interesting that he filed for divorce as well. If he filed for divorce and they were going through this process, what value in it is to kill her? What is the value to kill her?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bit I don't get. At least he didn't kill his own kids too. He wasn't an annihilator.
Yeah. Yeah. Did the kids say he went out at all, or were they at school or something?
They were asleep. It was at wee hours of the morning. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So if we believe the prosecution's story, he put the kids to bed. They're fast asleep. He cycles over to Becky's house, breaks in, shoots her, cycles back home, goes to bed. In the morning, or actually he takes the kids to school the next day. People said that he was a bit weird the next day, like he was a bit, I think I read somewhere that he seemed a bit edgy or something. And then he actually showed up to the school 50 minutes before Becky should have been there to pick them up. And people thought that was a bit weird. And then he left, not picking the kids up. And then he contacted the dad and said, oh, can you go check on Becky? Because I've been trying to call her and she hasn't been responding and she's meant to pick up the kids and I've had a call from the school. So there is some stuff around his behaviour at that point in time, which makes you go, oh, again, on balance, but it's not evidence per se that we haven't got him standing over her body with a smoking gun.
It's a very big sentence for a very doubtful, a conviction lacking a lot of evidence.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe not doubtful, but lacking a lot of evidence. And the fact that there were no, appeals were knocked back, you kind of go, ooh.
I think the appeals are knocked back because you haven't got any kind of new news to give us. So I think he appealed on the basis of some of the things that the prosecution had done. So that something about, I can't remember what it was now, but that whether they had introduced things that maybe prejudiced people against him or, that sort of stuff. So it was about, the
Yeah,
appeals were
yeah.
all about the process of the prosecution. There was no new evidence being brought to bear. And so the judge can pretty
no
easily
doubt.
say, no, I'm quite happy with the way that was run. That was perfectly okay. So piss off.
Yeah. Also, big conviction.
Huge.
Massive conviction. And I think it's interesting because the judge's commentary was about, it was about the violence against her. It was about you stood over her and you shot her 14 times. And we've heard from the expert that she didn't die. And so
Yeah.
that is so violent and that is so heinous. And your sons were tucked up at home while you came to murder their mother. That was the kind of sentiment that sat around the closing statements of the judge, which I think is all weighing into you're never coming out of jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
It's a sad one too. I knew it would be.
I don't know I can sentence anyone.
Well, I mean, if he did it, then life sentence is probably fine. And as I say, I
Why are there
probably
3 life
wouldn't.
sentences?
I don't know.
That is nonsense, isn't it? Doesn't
Rolled into one. You only live once, like literally. So I don't get it. It was
But
maybe
normally
to
there'd
make
be
it.
3
We're
murders to
taking
get
it
3
so
life sentences.
seriously.
I'm confused. I feel
You've
like there's
stolen your children's mother's life and you've taken that from your children. And there are 3 children. So I have no idea, right? I'm making this up. But I'm just going to go, why would you go 3 whole life sentences? It's just weird. And then say, to be amusingly, served concurrently. Well, of course they are, because I've only got 1 life.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, Swanee, do you want a sentence or are you just perplexed?
No, I don't want a sentence. I don't think I've got enough.
Yeah, it's weird.
And because they've gone so far, I'm like, I feel like there's something missing. But
I feel like there's something missing.
I think the moral of the story is don't leave Aldi shopping bags lying around in your house.
Or at least clean your DNA off them. Yeah. Agreed.
Well, no, if you just don't have them, no one can pick one up and
use it as a
shoot
silencer.
you.
Yeah.
God, I don't.
Get rid of your shell casings.
If you looked in my boot, they'd be like, there's no Aldi ones, but there's certainly, it's like full of reusable bags. It's like, oh my God, what's this woman been up to?
Even what we just said, just back to the case, if you were going to go and shoot your wife 14 times and you had been firing shells from the same gun in your basement, you would know they would look at your house and search you. You would get rid of those shell casings, wouldn't you?
Certainly would.
There is something weird about him having the shell casings that match the gun. It's just either he's an idiot, a massive idiot, or he didn't do it, or something in between. It's just weird. It's just, to your point, Swanee, something's missing, isn't it?
Yeah. Strange. Yeah. I think we might hear more about this in the future, perhaps.
It might be one we have to come back to.
Yeah.
And speaking of things we might need to come back to, I meant to say this at the top of the episode, but just a little catch up for us all. And I can't remember the name of the case that we covered, but do you remember Chad and Laurie Daybell?
Yeah.
Who, Swanee never remembers anything.
Yeah.
Was it my story?
They went holidaying.
They went to Hawaii, but
to Honolulu.
After Chad had killed her 2 kids because they went a bit mental. They were Church of Latter-day Saints, and then they decided they had their own sort of sect, and then you were on the dark side, or you were an evil dark spirit or something.
Yeah.
And so they knocked people off. But mainly they knocked off her 2 children, which was horrendous. Yeah. She has just been found guilty of being complicit in the murder of her first husband, Charles Vallow. And I did talk about how it's very likely that she was involved in that. Her brother killed Charles, and her brother got away with it on the basis of it being he thought that Charles had attacked him or something. It was like, home defense type argument. And I remember she was sitting on the leaning against the bonnet of a car, and she had just taken her daughter, I think, round to the Macca's or something, and she's just casually sitting there after her first husband's been murdered. And I'm like, this is wrong. So she's just been done for that too. And I don't know if it happened at the time, but Chad Daybell, has been sentenced to, he's got a death sentence I can't remember if that was the case at the time that we covered the case. So he's been sentenced to death, and she's basically going to do life for her part in that. So there's a little update on the Chad and Laurie Daybell story for you.
Goodness.
Maybe she'll get a free upgrade to death after being involved in her first husband's murder.
She hasn't. Well, I thought she'd been sentenced. I don't think she got the death penalty. Well, thanks for joining me for that one. And as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.